The 2024 Polyglot Gathering is brought to you by Glossica.
Hello guys, I think we're supposed to start. Please, before we start, remember about Slido. It's a workshop, but last 5 minutes of the workshop will answer your questions. Derek will answer your questions, of course. So can we show Slido for a moment? Yeah, so you can scan QR code right now, ask questions during the whole workshop, and then last 5 minutes, Derek will answer them. And welcome to Icelandic crash course. Unfortunately, I'm not able to read the Icelandic title.
Takk fyrir. Endurtakið ef ég geri þetta. If I do this, please repeat. Góðan daginn. Góðan daginn. Góðan daginn. Hvað segir þú gott? Hvað segir þú gott? Hvað segir þú gott? Allt gott. Allt gott. Mjög gott. Hvað heitir þú? Hvað? Hvað heitir þú? Ég heiti Derek. Ég heiti Derek. Ég íslenskukennari. Ég ætla að kenna ykkur íslensku. Eru þið til? Nei? Já? 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 Flott. Okay. Þá ætlið þið að læra nýju íslenskuna. Now you will learn the new Icelandic. So hello, my name is Derek Terell Allen, and I'm an Icelandic teacher at the Tin Can Factory, known in Icelandic as Dósaverksmiðjan, because the old building that we were in used to actually be a tin can factory. It's a language school in the capital of Iceland, Reykjavík, and it is a school in which we're speaking Icelandic from day one, from minute one, because that's the only language that everybody in the school has in common, is Icelandic. So what I specifically do is I'm teaching students literacy in the Latin alphabet, or in the Icelandic version of it anyways. And so I'm getting a lot of students who are coming from the Middle East, for example, where they have a different alphabet, and also students who have maybe more like turbulent and broken educational backgrounds, many of whom are not even literate in their own native language. So I have a lot of patience, so if you make mistakes, it's okay, it's a safe space. I want you to feel free expressing yourself and just have fun, all right? So you might be wondering, okay, what is the new Icelandic? So the new Icelandic, I feel that a lot of Icelandic courses, especially for beginners, put forth this image of Iceland that's quite outdated. So here are some examples of things. You know, everyone's talking about, Vikings, they want to read the sagas, and it's just, well, I mean, it's great, but, the Vikings are dead, and, there's no, No use to trying to, speak the way trying to speak to them because they're not around. Then people are also into the music, like Björk and Sigurós, for example, of Monsters and Men, etc., etc. And then Eyjafjallajökull. That's that volcano that erupted years and years ago that caused all sorts of travel disruptions. There was even ash and stuff found in New York City. The tourist industry, as well as a lot of Icelandic teachers, still cannot get over this because it's like a fun little party trick to be able to say Eyjafjallajökull. And then, everyone's just like, oh, Iceland is green and Greenland's icy. All these stereotypes, and it's just, I think it's important. While these things are important, tapping into the past and tapping into the history, of course, I think it's important to also recognize the way that Iceland is today and the future of Iceland as well. So, by the end of this crash course, you will know some basic Icelandic words and phrases. You will learn about the changes happening in Icelandic language and culture and in society and how that's impacting the language. And then furthermore, you will learn that Icelandic doesn't need to be hard. My goal here is really to demystify Icelandic, to make it accessible, especially when there's more and more people learning it. It doesn't need to be hard. All right, so first we're going to talk a little bit about Icelandic, but I don't want to get too steeped in jargon and the academic stuff. But of course, since I know my audience right in front of me, I'll get into a little bit into it. But for the people maybe watching this back, or maybe people who are maybe trying to take their first steps into Icelandic and don't really know much about the academic side, I'm going to simplify things. All right. So, Icelandic is a North Germanic language. So it's quite similar to Faroese. That's actually the closest one to us, spoken in the Faroe Islands. And then Norwegian, Swedish, and Danish. So I've actually been speaking to the Swedish speakers here in Icelandic, and the conversations, I won't say flow, but we can understand each other, or at least we seem to. And then it's also not too far from English, Dutch, German, Afrikaans, and any other Germanic language that might come to mind. So presumably if you're here at this presentation or if you're watching this, then you know English. So you can learn Icelandic fairly easily. Icelandic is a gendered language, so inanimate objects can be he or she, people can be it. So for example, barn, that's a word for child or baby. That's it in Icelandic. But the word kjóll, which means dress, like a frilly dress, that's a masculine word. Icelandic has 4 cases. So the same word looks different depending on the verbs. The 4 cases are nominative, accusative, dative, genitive. And especially a lot of native English speakers, when they're studying Icelandic, they're just like, what the hell is this? And I always explain to them just okay, just like you would say, you wouldn't say hit I, you would say hit me, We have this with I, me, my, he, him, his, she, her, hers, etc. And then Icelandic does not have an indefinite or a definite article. So there's no words for a or an, and there's no one word for the. If you want to say a or an whatever, you just say the word for that thing. So hús means house and also a house. Epli means apple and also an apple. But with the, what you do is you add one of 24 endings to a word in order to say the da-da-da-da-da. It depends on if it's singular or plural, masculine or feminine, which one of the 4 cases it's in, et cetera, et cetera. But yes, you can do that on your own time. All right, so here's a little bit of a review before we get more into pronunciation and more phrases, all right? So, hvað þú gott? Allt gott. Mjög gott, okay. Hvað heitir þú? Ég heiti. Yeah, mjög gott. Don't say ég heiti Derek, and except if you're me. All right. So, we're gonna go over the alphabet because it gives you a good insight into the pronunciation. All right. So, repeat after me. Ah. Ow. Like ow, ow. Mm-hmm. Bjär. Dier. Eth. Eth. Yeah, so for example, if you know Arabic, it's kind of like vel, that kind of like a th sound, more so in English if it's maybe in the middle of a word. The. Air. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. F. Mm-hmm. Yeah. How. E. E. Very good. A lot of people get tripped up on A and E, but very good. I should have had more faith in all of you. You're polyglots. Yours. Mm-hmm. Cow. Okay. This next one, listen really, really good, okay? Listen really well. At. Okay, that's the start, okay? At. So the best way I can think of to explain it is like, think of it like you're winking at someone like, at. At. Yeah, and it has to only come from that click sound. It only can come from one side, because if you do it from both, it's not going to sound right. Choose your left or your right, whichever comes more naturally to you. At. At. And it, on its own, it usually does make a L sound, but if you see two of these in a row, oftentimes it's a M. N. Or. O. All right, so just to like kind of clarify, because a lot of people get tripped up with these two. The first one, just kind of like the English O without the accent. The best way I can kind of think of to describe it is just kind of like, I went for a walk, I got a cup of coffee, walked my dog, that kind of like that, but just less exaggerated. And then the one with the accent is just kind of like a O, just like you might be acquainted with in English, for example. Pierre. Air. As. Tier. Ooh. So with the U without the accent, the best way I can do this is just kind of like think of a cow. And then ooh. Very good. Mjög. Vaff. Ax. Ypsilon E. Very good, and it sounds just like E, but for whatever reason, there's two written forms to this, and the language has not reformed or done anything to it. Ypsilon E. And it sounds just like E, but same thing with E and Ypsilon E, just two written forms. Thor. Thor. Very good. Kind of like thorn, like in a flower or something, or if you get poked. Thor. And this makes a TH sound, maybe in English more if it's at the beginning of a word. And also, if you know Arabic, for example, it's kind of like the, with like the three dots on top. I. Okay? So, gonna go rapid fire over the alphabet, okay? Try your best to keep up. Ah, ow, bier, dier, eð, je, f, g, há, jóð, ká, n, ó, p, s, t, vaf, x, thought, Vel gert, well done. That wasn't too hard, was it? Okay. Yeah. So, exactly, that's exactly how it is. Y is y, and then Y with an accent is y. Yeah, basically the same. Yeah, so to get a bit into the jargon, is voiced. So to think of like a TH sound in like that's maybe not the best example. But yes, it's slightly different than thought is more unvoiced, I think. So especially if you know Arabic, like I said earlier, is more like the vel, and then thought is more like the, right? All right, and then there are more sounds in Icelandic that are not in the alphabet, like a. They sound exactly the same. There's two written forms, yet again. And then there's a. Yes, very good. And then because it's such an international conference, I'm sure you have letters in your name that aren't here. So here's a few of them. Sie. Ku. Tvövaltvaff. Tvövaltvaff. Yeah, it's literally double V. And then seta. And seta did used to be used in Icelandic, but they reformed the language so that it no longer is being used. In every place where it was used, you would now see an S. All right, so. That is true. I'm sorry, I can't really hear. Sjón? Yeah. So like a lot of CH sounds like ch or ch. They'll use like S yorð or tie yorð instead in order to get that sound. Yeah, all right. So here are some more phrases now that you kind of know a little bit about the pronunciation. Okay. Hvaða tungumál talar þú? Hvaða tungumál talar þú? Yeah, exactly. I'll let you know how to answer in Icelandic in a second. But this is definitely an important phrase at a conference like this. Okay, it means what language do you speak, or what languages do you speak? The way you answer, ég tala. Okay, so here, if you go onto the street in Iceland, these are some languages that you might commonly come across, plus Czech, because I only included Czech because we're here, right? But there's not a ton of Czech people in Iceland. But the rest of the languages are fairly well represented. Íslensku. Ensku. Tékknesku. Pólsku. Spænsku. Litháísku. Tailensku. Kurdísku. Þýsku. Tagalog. Arabískur. Sómölskur. Víetnamskur. Frönskur. Úkraínskur. Persneskur. Eða farsi. Or farsi, sorry. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I'll let you... Exactly. There's more surprises to come. All right, so here's another phrase. Since it's so international, you're going to want to ask, hvaðan ertu? Mjög gott. Okay, means where are you from? Ég frá. Okay, so, and these are some countries or nations that you will commonly come across in Iceland, all right? Except for Czechia, because again, we're here. Íslandi. Bandaríkjunum. Ooh, very good. Tékklandi. Pólandi. Venezuela. Litháen. Tælandi. Kurdistan. Þýskalandi. Filippseyjum. Palestínur. Somaliur. Vietnam. Frakklandi. Úkraínur. Afghanistan. Okay, and frá Bulgaria. And if you want to know your country, you can find me after the presentation and I can let you know. All right, and these are immigrant groups that are common in Iceland. And again, like this person was saying earlier with the pink hair, what's your name? Batka? Blanca, yes. Iceland is a much more diverse society than what people realize. And immigrants are actually having quite an impact on the language. We'll talk more about how many there are once we learn the numbers. All right, so we're gonna learn how to count. Okay. Repeat after me. It's gonna be pretty quick, okay? Einn. Tveir. Þrír. Fjórir. Fimm. Six. There's always somebody that giggles when I teach this. It's great. Sjö. Átta. Níu. Tíu. All right? Let's do it in one go. Einn. Mjög gott. Very good. All right? So 11 to 20 is 11. 12. 13. 14. 15. 16. 17. 18. 19. 20. Ooh, very good. 20. That pre-aspiration, yes. Two T's. Yes. So it's not tugur, it's tugur. Yes. All right. And then we have other numbers. Þrjátíu. Fjörtíu. Fimmtíu. Sextíu. Sjötíu. Áttatíu. Níutíu. Hundrað. Þúsund. Million. Mjög gott. Very good. All right. So. All right. So we can ask ourselves, and we can answer with the numbers, okay? Hvað búa margir á Íslandi? You don't have to repeat this, okay? So how many people live in Iceland? And það búa, svona það bil, 380,000 manns á Íslandi, okay? So about 380,000 people in Iceland, okay? But of these, Okay. Hvað margir innflytjendur á Íslandi? How many immigrants are in Iceland? 74,000, approximately. So about 74,000 immigrants. That's about 19% of the population. So about a fifth of the population is of an immigrant background. And immigrants are actually helping to shape the Icelandic language in quite significant ways. So innflytjendur, what it comes from is að flytja inn, to move in, right? But there are discussions going on right now, is this even the right word? Because immigrants are starting to kind of take umbrage with this vocabulary. And other words that are being used are like útlendingar, which is kind of like, it's kind of the closest thing to a slur, basically. So a lot of foreigners are kind of moving away from using that word. But there's also nýbúar, which is kind of like new resident. Nýslendingar, which combines nýr, which is new, and then Íslendingar, which is Icelander, kind of like a portmanteau, if you will. And then there's more words being developed. Imperfect, in quotes, Icelandic is becoming more prominent because of such of a high rate of immigration. So Icelandic with an accent is being heard more often than before. Icelandic with grammatical errors and things of this nature. Some people are very much okay with this. Some people are very, very much not. It's a very hot topic right now, actually. So here is a line from a poem called Íslenskunámskeið, Icelandic Dream. It's found in Polyphony of erlendum uppruna, Polyphony of Foreign Origin. It's a poetry book, the first one of its kind, written entirely by immigrants. And this is a line from the poem by Eva Marcinek. Slæmur hreimur eins og andremma. Okay? So what it says is a bad accent is like bad breath. Yeah, and I mean, you can laugh, it's totally okay, but this is the reality. A lot of native Icelanders, this is their opinion of non-native Icelandic, is that it's basically, you might as well just like if you have bad breath, people just kind of want you to close your mouth. If you have a bad accent, they're just like, shut up. And because of the more increased diversity, people of color in Iceland are starting to get more of a voice, and they're starting to make words and find words to actually discuss their experiences of Iceland. So we have here on the left, we have the word menningarnám. So menning is the word for culture, and then nám is kind of like acquisition, so cultural acquisition. In English, the best translation would probably be cultural appropriation. And then on the right-hand side, we have lithyggja. So litur is color, and then hyggja is kind of like mind, or way of thinking. So lithyggja is colorism, which is different from racism in the sense that it is actually about like your skin tone, whether it's light or dark. And as far as I could see, at least, I was trying to figure out, both of these words were largely developed by Icelanders of color, which is, I think, very interesting. Because especially it's not some Icelanders of color, people don't really know them except for maybe Löwe, the jazz artist who won a Grammy recently. We're not very many, right? But we're there. So we're going to learn about personal pronouns, okay? Some of you might see where this is going. All right, so you're going to repeat after me again, all right? Ég. Þú. Okay, ég, þú. Við. Okay, ég og þú. Við, we. Þið. Þið, þú og þú, og þú og þú. English doesn't have a great translation of this second person plural. There's you, all, you, y'all, yous, you guys, whatever, choose one. Han. Okay, so that's he. But if you want to talk about multiple he's, so multiple men, multiple boys, or multiple masculine objects, you would say þeir. So that's they. Hún. Okay, so that's she. If you want to talk about multiple she's, þær. So that's also they. Það. Það, that is it. And again, it can be objects and people. And then if you want to talk about mixed gender anything, þau. So, for example, it's not like Spanish where if there could be 1,000 women but there's one man in the room, it's ellos. It's kind of actually the opposite in Icelandic, whereas it could be 1,000 men, one woman in the room. You need to talk about þau, and that's they as well. So we have 3 different types of they, and that trips people up a lot. And then hán. Hán. So it also means they, but it's more like the singular they in English. And this is used primarily by non-binary people. So now we're talking about how Icelandic is being queered, if you will. So there are many neo-pronouns that exist, but hán is hands down the most popular. No one even really knows the other ones. And LGBTQ people are really helping to shape the Icelandic language. And they even have this here language database called Hinsegin frá Ö til A, excuse me. And hinsegin, it means originally other, right? But it's been used to kind of mean queer in recent years. So they have created, especially the words in the purple, it's LGBTQ Icelanders that have been creating these words. So we have the first example here, don't repeat it, but we have strákur, which is boy, stelpa, which is girl, and stálp, which is a non-binary child. And then the second example, we have karl, or maður, which will both mean man, kona, which is woman, and then kvár, which is presumably a non-binary adult. And then the last one is karlkyns, which is male as an adjective, like he is male, kvenkyns, and then kynsegin, which is non-binary. And if you notice, it rhymes with hinsegin, and hinsegin means other. Kin is like sex or gender, so kynsegin, like other sex, other gender, is basically what it means. And then the language, like how it takes women into account, has been a discussion for a long time, because maður also means human, right? So for example, we have kvenmaður, which is female human, or female as a noun. And so from this, especially around like when feminism was becoming more popular in Iceland, you got a quote like this, konur eru líka menn, which means women are also men, or women are also human, right? It's kind of that double meaning, right? And this is something that especially Vigdís Finnbogadóttir, the world's first democratically elected female president, this was something she kind of tapped into when she was rising to popularity. And then we have, for example, when we talk about everyone, right? On the first one you see is allir. That's the convention, and that's to talk about everyone, and it's a more masculine grammatical construction. But more people are starting to use öll, which is the other one. So we have an example, allir þeir sem hafa áhuga, which is all those who are interested, versus öll þau sem hafa áhuga, meaning the same thing, just it's seen as gender inclusive to some people. So in 2016, the word of the year, orð ársins, was hrútskýring. This was a word created by Icelandic women. Where it's a combination, it's a portmanteau of hrútur, which is ram, a male sheep, and then útskýring, which is explanation. So it's basically the Icelandic version of mansplaining. I think it's quite interesting how that word came to be born. And then there's also changes happening with the patronymic culture. Because in Iceland, as you might know, like last names that go from generation to generation, they're not really a thing. So people are usually named after their fathers. So we have here Brynjar Friðriksson, which is Brynjar son of Friðrik. But more people are starting to call themselves, say, Brynjar Telmur Friðriksson, which is to say, Brynjar son of Telma and Friðrik. And the names of his parents are in the genitive case, that's to say the possessive case, right? Because Telma and Friðrik are in possession of Brynjar, right? And this is also, there's all different types of ways to do this for gender inclusivity, right? So if you are a woman, of course, you might be Brynja Friðriksdóttir. That's also conventional, right? But particularly non-binary people, they've come up with different ways to observe this convention and also affirm themselves. So, for example, we have here Bryn Frederiks Bur. Bur is like offspring, kind of. Or you could also just have your parents' name in the genitive case. Bryn Frederiks, that's simple. But yes, that is how that is all going on. And so, what have you learned? Okay, you learned basic greetings, how to talk about yourself, countries and languages, numbers, personal pronouns, and that Icelandic is a language of the present and the future, and that it's still developing. We haven't gotten stuck in the Viking age. And like, granted, of course, it's important to tap into that and recognize and respect the history, but there's history yet to be made. And I don't think that we should lose sight of that. So here, I'm not a plagiarist, and then, takk fyrir. Okay. All right, so there are questions. All right. Okay, sure. Yeah. I'm not entirely sure about Danish. I think it probably borrowed from some other languages, or like there was contact with other languages. But yeah, I'm not sure how that happened. Yeah, because I am always wondering that myself. Thank you. All right, so for a speaker of Icelandic who hasn't studied another Scandinavian language, it's typically easiest to understand bokmål, Swedish, or Danish, or no pattern. Okay, that's a good question. So, I would say, I don't know, it's very personal as well, because like speaking, I guess, like Swedish is maybe easier to understand. But I would say, maybe Norwegian, because like as like Werner was saying the other day, if you were at his crash course for Norwegian, Norwegian's kind of like a good middle ground, if you will. You kind of get the best of both worlds between Swedish and Danish. But I really don't think it's strictly necessary to do so, to use another Scandinavian language to use to study Icelandic. So if you want to study Icelandic, just study Icelandic. Okay. All right. How do you say www as in website domains? Okay. Yeah, so I mean, tvöfalt. But yes. Yeah, I mean, if you just wanted me to say W 3 times, then there you go. But nobody says it like that, of course, yeah. All right, how easy is it for Icelanders to adopt neologisms in their daily life? It's very easy. Especially for the young folks, because so much of like their social media and their entertainment is in English, and so it's just a lot of these are coming from English, but there is also words being created that are more Icelandic-y over certain things. There's no like l'Alliance Française or like l'Académie Française, excuse me, or something like that. No central body that decides this is right and this is wrong. But there is a lot going on, and Icelanders are actually very diligent about adopting neologisms and creating them. Thank you. Why is et pronounced in such a way? Does it actually have anything to do with the L sound as we know it? See, I'm not entirely sure. It's just, I don't think there's any real answer. It's just more theories. Honestly, my theory, and it's not a great one, but I really do think it has to do with maybe the temperature of Iceland. That maybe it just, people's mouths were maybe just frozen, or just kind of just, it was hard to move and make maybe a sound, so maybe it just kind of came out as, because like you don't really have to open your mouth so much to make that sound. But beats me. Yeah. We need to ask the Vikings about that one. All right. Are the neopronouns used only by non-binary people, or every time when gender doesn't play the role? They're really only used by non-binary people. I know there is like some talks about maybe making it so that it's just kind of standard speech, if you will. Because I know, like, for example, in Sweden, they changed it fairly recently to use kind of gender neutral Swedish. But in Iceland, this really hasn't caught on, and people tend to think more of the gender of the people involved or of the, like the grammatical gender rather than, or the conventions that have always stayed in place. Materials and resources you could advise for beginners. Takk fyrir. All right, so one good one is Icelandic Online. You have to sign up for it, but it's free. And it's actually made by the University of Iceland, which also has the Icelandic as a second language program. And it's really good, it's really thorough. It is perfect for self-study, especially if you're dedicated. So I really recommend that. It's a great way to get a jump start. A good book if you like to touch your materials, Beginner's Icelandic. It's a Hippocrene book. The authors are Helga something, I forget her name, and then the other one is Jacek. His first name is Jacek. So it's a really good book. Do children learn the alphabet like you just taught us, or is there a version with simplified sound for children? For example, b instead of bie. No? I mean, of course they do learn the sounds, right? But I mean, there is songs and whatnot, but I mean, just like, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, if you're a native English speaker, you learn the Icelandic alphabet. And granted, it might be weird to you as an adult, but for a child who's, got Icelandic speaking parents and goes to an Icelandic school and lives in Iceland, it might not be as strange. Is double M or N in a word just historical, or does it ever change pronunciation? Yes. So it does change pronunciation slightly. You lengthen the consonant. So let's take S as an example, actually, because there's more of like it's a more sláandi example, more of like, sláandi. So S, so kisa, okay, with just one S, that's meow, cat, okay. But kissa with two S's is, okay, kiss. So you don't want to mess that one up. Consonant length matters. What is the ending of non-binary adjectives? You would use the neuter form of adjectives. So there's masculine, feminine, neuter forms. You'd use the neuter form. What pronoun would be used for a person whose gender is unknown before the non-binary words were created? For example, a surprise guest. So a surprise guest, for example, guest is in Icelandic gestur. So that's a masculine word. So you use the masculine pronoun. So you would think more about, okay, like who are we talking about, like in the context of the situation. Hvað er uppáhaldsorðið þitt á íslensku? What's my favorite word in Icelandic? I like the word sko. So sko, it doesn't really mean anything. It means everything at the same time. It's a filler word. You can just kind of use it as a verbal period sometimes. I really like it. It's quite versatile. What resources would you recommend for learning Icelandic for someone who doesn't live there? All right. So I would definitely recommend like the book that I mentioned earlier, Beginner's Icelandic. And there's also Colloquial Icelandic, because I'm sure a lot of you are into the colloquial series. That's a good one as well because it's very thorough. And the author, actually, she was one of my professors in the university. She's really good. Thank you for introducing an Icelandic of the future and the present. I was told before that it's linguistically difficult to address non-binary people. It's become less challenging, definitely. Thank you. Is it true that young Icelanders use English as a second mother tongue? Second mother tongue, I'm not sure about that, but definitely a lot of young Icelanders are starting to speak English because of the entertainment, and especially neurodivergent Icelanders, so especially those with who are maybe autistic. I've actually heard that some of them find it easier to speak English. I'm not entirely sure why. I think it's quite an interesting development. Do you ever see parents these days apply the non-Icelandic way of passing surnames? Simply taking surname. So there's actually a committee that actually approves your child's name. So for example, if you are both Icelandic, like native Icelandic, you cannot name your child something else. Like you have to name your child according to Icelandic conventions and traditions. If it's like one Icelander and one foreign parent, then it has to be reflected in the name. So like you can have like a foreign first name, but you also have to have an Icelandic first name. You can have a foreign last name, but then your first names have to be both Icelandic or something like that. How strong is the opposition to new non-binary pronouns in Iceland? It's quite strong. So it's a very vocal minority. Most people don't really care. But there's always some people who are just, just complaining about it because they don't want the language to change. But languages do change and evolve. So it's important to make room for them. And we are right on time. Perfect. Takk fyrir.